The most detailed video game spaceship made thus far, the Mercury Starrunner, is a mid-size, 3 to 4 person blockade running, cargo carrying, ship scanning, data hacking, smooth criminal, with a lot of interior space to make use of. And while I had certain expectations walking into this ship, I've left pleasantly surprised and also a bit disappointed in some areas. This is the Space Tomato ship tour and review of the Crusader Mercury Starrunner, the first of its kind, and the best way to get a cinematic first look at the detailed spaceships of Star Citizen. In addition, all supporters get an additional cinematic. And if you want to win this ship for yourself, well, you may find that I'm giving one away in the coming weeks, so hop over to my Twitch channel in the video description to find out how you might win. Now, let's see what all the buzz is about. Before seeing this ship in person, I mostly compared it to the Freelancer Max, as many of you know, given the length. But that's not all there is to this ship. In terms of interior space, this ship has easily double the space of the Freelancer. Trust me, this ship is big. And this size puts it more in line with the Constellation series, a ship that shares some similarity in design in its rather utilitarian vibe. And while I do mention this ship has some utilitarian aspects to it, the exterior is quite sleek regardless, with just 2 laser turrets sticking out of the top and bottom of the ship carrying 2 size 3 weapons each, and the pilot-controlled gimbaled gun in the front carrying 2 size 3 weapons as well. The only other major outlying surface on this ship is the scanning dish, which is propped up on the exterior opposite the actual scanning room on the interior. And this dish can't be lowered, unfortunately. Besides that, the exterior is a distinct mixture of flowing bent panels and sharply rolled off edges, and high contrast industrial designs surrounding the more component-heavy sections, such as the thrusters and the engine. The high contrast design rolls over to the undercarriage with immense, uninterrupted dark gray surfaces covering the entirety of the back and bottom. This exterior gives the viewer the idea that the ship isn't necessarily luxury or meant for comfort, but values high quality in addition to functional design. You'll see this mirrored on the interior with the lack of windows. There are trade-offs here in looks for functionality, but the overall vibe I get from this ship boils down to one word: quality. It feels as though RSI and Consolidated Outland got together and said, let's make something that fits both private and military use. This sense of quality, functionality, aesthetic cohesion, and even a bit of a retro feel will follow you inside as you walk up the widened rear ramp. Now, this is the only entrance into the ship, and thus acts as a bit of a central meeting location for many paths throughout the ship, some obvious and some hidden. As the first experience of a ship interior for a new manufacturer, I'm quite pleased with what I'm seeing. As new shaders, textures, and materials are becoming available, every vehicle that releases is giving us much more diverse atmospheres and designs besides gray, darker gray, and white. Crusader has an obvious color scheme, which is defined at the very first step. And several key design cues are also established here. Light strips down the wall, various angled cutouts and panels, and quite a bit of noise on all surfaces, whether that be from vents, rivets, or just some coloring. The bay here is large. I mean really large. You can fit all combinations of vehicles with space to spare. Or you can fit up to 114 SCU of valuable cargo to make some money. More than the base Constellation. Now, as we move from this rear room, please note the new door controls, which will make their way to all vehicles over time. This and the nearby light switch are things you will see all over the ship as the team continues to include new features as they build out the latest vehicles. The first room off to the side here is engineering. An interesting place to put it considering the only entrance is right next door, but possibly the only option. The room is small, but very efficient, hosting 2 medium power plants and 2 medium coolers under angled panels, as well as a couple medium shield generators up on the wall here, as has never been seen before in another ship. The quantum drive, a medium component, is hosted on the wall over here in a pill-shaped enclosure, mirroring the door that stands across the way, which we'll come back to later. I'd like to stop for a moment though, before we continue, and make a reference to the ship's design language that this most reminds me of, the Endar Spire, from Knights of the Old Republic. The pill-shaped and circular doors, the slightly raised walkways you'll see later that were on ships like the Coder II Ebon Hawk, this ship has a very Star Wars Coder vibe to me all the way down to the seat cushions, and that in itself, besides the styling, gives me a very retro-futuristic feel inside of this ship. That makes me think the lore must have this ship dated quite a ways back. I believe the corresponding architectural style in Star Citizen is the streamlined era, from mid-century. Leaving engineering, we have the remainder of the ship's main ingress point, an elevator. I'm not sure this was the best idea, as if the power goes out and the elevator is up, you're not going to have a fun time. However, if the elevator is down, there seems to be a ladder here, or you can clamber up to the next floor. Riding the elevator up, notice this isn't the first time we've seen an octagonal door, something reminiscent of Anvil's style. This, and circular doors and hallways, appears to be a Crusader trademark now. Walking through the door brings you into the server room, a currently useless room with some fascinating designs that will be the primary function of the ship when data storage and hauling comes into play. I do find myself wondering what liberties they took with the design to make sure it would work with their future ideas. On your immediate left is the scanning room, separated by a door, another room similar in size to engineering, but with less efficient use. Much like with the Terrapin, you have a scanning chair and not much else. You do have some consoles here, which will most likely be for analyzing and organizing your findings before sending them to storage. But besides that, there is little use of the rest of the room, which could have probably been used for something like EVA suits or even a small workbench, which is still possible. It is also possible that scanning gameplay is meant to have some extra space nearby for some unknown tasks. We will see eventually. But for now, not a great use of space in my opinion. Again, note that same shape on the wall behind the chair. All the way down the hall, you have one of the most convenient positions for ship defense I've seen, with both the top and bottom defense turrets meeting in the same place, allowing players to easily find both turrets at a moment's notice. And these turrets hit. You won't have trouble defending yourself against small fighters, which I don't expect much more would be sent against you if you aren't blockade running, which in that instance, well, just fly. You'll be able to take on a couple bounty hunting missions here and there, and not have much trouble with the normal fighters. Moving forward in the ship, you come to the true center. The first stop up here is habitation. Huh. Seems the door didn't open for him. Well, we'll continue. This space is small and separated again by a door like the other rooms, but has some possible changes I see. Rather than 8 duffel bags on the wall, this area could benefit from a proper environmental suit locker. That being said, with soft body engineering being worked on, these bags may become functional soon and may be able to hold armor. This center section could have also been utilized for a locker. Moving forward with the circular motif, you have 2 shower/bathrooms on either side of the room, and 3 beds past that. I feel one of these beds could be moved where the lockers are, the lockers could be moved to where one of these desks are, and the back portion could be used to provide the leader of the party with a bit more room. However, the current setup seems to encourage more of an equal standing setup, rather than one shipmate having more authority or luxuries than the other. This could be by design and on purpose. Before we move on, here's where I'd like to draw your eye to the new door controls. These controls will be brought to all ships, but as a first implementation, I'll include it in this review. These controls will allow you to turn off proximity sensors and open doors manually, something we've all wished for as doors don't open in time and we end up closing them on ourselves. They also allow you to lock the doors, though at the moment with no ship authorization, that doesn't really help. Now moving through this front area of the ship, you might notice the distinct difference in noise pollution materials and lighting from the back. Rather than the metal gratings and ever-present fog of the back section of the ship, the front of the ship has more hard composites and even less contrast-heavy lighting. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm no morphologist, so I'm not going to tell you how these tones might make you feel. But there is certainly a difference between the back sort of spaceship functional area and the more living area up front. I like the mix, honestly, and I feel when I find that perfect zone that I enjoy on a ship, I tend to call them the tomato tones. But enough of that. The rec room is another small area, separate from the rest of the ship, where you can kick back, prepare some food, and play some chess. Like, you can actually play chess. It's a bit finicky, but there's our very first minigame in Star Citizen, so that's a thing. The same shape finds itself on the wall in the back there, and a hidden entrance allows you access to the guts of the ship below, though I won't show you how exactly to open it, even though I'm sure you'll find it out pretty quickly. It is there. And before we continue, I think it'd be nice to have a docking collar right here in the middle of the ship for additional entry and exit, or even escape from some not so great situations. Now, let's move on to the bridge. The next segment leading to the bridge has some incredibly impressive lighting. It's a very pleasant hallway with modules lining the entire circular structure. I can only imagine these may be blade modules allowing for additional computer functionality on the ship, or possibly special scanning or data storage security additions. I can't be sure though. Moving to the front door of the bridge, I just have to point out the little detail of the manual activation handhold, which will be necessary if you lose power in the future. But opening up the front door and stepping out onto the bridge, we find an incredibly detailed compartment with a lot of personality. The first thing I notice is the incredible view. The viewport is almost entirely unobstructed, with even some view space down towards the ground. But as I said earlier, the chairs are also incredibly charismatic, if you will. The style seems very retro, and is especially highlighted by the nearby wall lights. There is barely a flat surface in the room, with a whopping 4 gun racks, several computer components, and a huge predetermined chair sliding space on the floor. About half of the cockpit floor space is used to transport the pilot and co-pilot to and from their flight consoles. While incredibly epic and very cool, it does raise the question of what could the space have been used for. I will say it's a better use of space than the 600i. Trellis frames line the wall as well, adding depth and shape to the cockpit, along with detailed metal railings running half the length of the room. And note, as I said before, much like RSI, Crusader seems to be not so shy about leaving some of the wiring and inner workings of the ship out for you to see. I refer to the style as tasteful exposure, though that's not something you should go around saying in public. Going back through the neck branch, you see another weapons rack here, and I can't help but feel that, going with what I just said, this rack could very easily be regressed and covered up to clean up the view. But Crusader's not looking to make things pretty at the cost of function. Now, let's get below decks and see the other side of the ship. Underneath everything we just explored is a crawl space where you can access quite a bit of the ship unseen. This is why the elevator was necessary in the cargo deck. You'll find several ways to access this area from the scanning room, engineering room, cargo bay, rec room, and habitation room. with the cargo bay opening containing a shielded area where your less desirable cargo can be transported, like things other than tomatoes. And keep in mind, while moving throughout this area, we aren't just talking about moving in secret and smuggling, which I don't really think the whole crawl space is that good for. Remember that engineering gameplay will require a player to know a ship inside and out, tracking down nodes and replacing relays at a moment's notice. Don't for a second think those relays won't be down in this area, where you'll need to know the route without checking the signs on the ground. This crawl space will be very important in keeping the ship running. Additionally, hiding things and people in this space or in the shielded cargo space is not about tricking players, it's about the NPCs. And even if the NPCs do know about these areas, which only higher ranking NPCs will, they will need to have a reason to check them thoroughly. Otherwise, if you're a reasonable crew, they will most likely come no further than the cargo bay if they need to board you. Now remember, this space empties out into engineering, behind that door I mentioned in the beginning of the review. It also puts you in the protected cargo space, which empties right back into the cargo deck, a good spot for defenders to be able to take out boarders if need be. That's 3 possible locations a defender can take on boarders in the cargo deck, allowing for a fairly defensible ship if you have an adequate crew. Now, I'll have more to say on this ship in the future as I play with it, but as of right now, I'm happy with it. Some key takeaways are that this ship is arguably the best small multi-crew ship in the game now. With enough firepower to protect yourself, enough cargo space to run trading missions for a decent profit, enough space to carry a mining vehicle or 2 to make some mining profit, and enough seats for 3 to 4 people to have something to do at any given time, it is an incredibly valuable mid-sized ship already, and the primary function isn't even accessible yet. One thing I think many people overlook is that the ship itself is a conglomerate of similar sized rooms. If you didn't notice, I made sure to point this out as we went through the review. Every person on this ship will find themselves working in a room that is disconnected from the rest of the ship, allowing everybody their own space and comfort during long trips or missions. This is very important for a multi-crew ship, especially one of this size. Star Citizen is not a game about what's on paper. It is a game about experience, which is why many people play it in its unfinished state. Rather than the game functions that are lacking, they play for the experience and memories they gain now. The ships are the same. The Mercury Star Runner may not be the killer on paper that people want to think it might be, or make fun of it for not being. That's not what makes it great. The experience that is waiting to be had in this ship, even in its current state, is better than most in the game. So once again, if you think this ship is useless, you are simply wrong. If you enjoyed this review and want to see more, please let me know in the comments. This is my very first, and I would love to do more in the future alongside my ship cinematics like the Prowler video you see on screen now. Speaking of cinematics, if you happen to be a channel member or a Patreon supporter, or even a subscriber on Twitch where I stream Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and some Saturdays, keep an eye out in the coming days for the cinematic associated with this review releasing exclusively to you. Thanks again for checking out my channel, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.